Hello there, Amanda here, and welcome to the Intermezzo Podcast, presenting diasporic stories from the UK and beyond. From exploring the kink community in London to talking to experimental artists based in Italy, we'll give insight into how people are taking their varied life experiences and making it work for them. Hello, today's guest is Bartira. She's an experimental electronic artist hailing from Bahia in northeast Brazil. She lived in London for many years and is now based in southern Italy. Along her journey of migration, her artistic practice has stayed constant and dynamic. Speculating on the digital age and black intel, she uses a myriad of techniques from field recordings, hacking, sound installations, and more. User of the hashtag #MakeNoiseBlackAgain, I give you the illustrious Bartira. Also, a quick note, you'll hear some music from time to time, all of which are Bartira's, and also there's a bit of a pause in the beginning, but don't worry, it all makes sense. Hello, Bartira, how are you doing?
Hello. Sorry, it was breaking up. Hello. That's technology doing what it can do best. Not much.
Making our lives really difficult, frankly. This has taken a long time to start.
Exactly.
What can you do? So how are you doing? Things good with you?
Yeah, everything's good with me.
Ground.
I am, very relaxed, enjoying 35 degrees.
Come on.
Italian summer.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Okay. It's really overcast here, but let me not talk about British weather. Anyway, so first question. You are freshly returned from your artist residency in a place called Castle in Germany. What was it about, and has it inspired any new projects and connections?
Yeah, so I was invited by a group called Ook, which is based in Rotterdam, in the Netherlands, I think, actually. It was really more about going to the Documenta 15 exhibition, which is a quite large scale exhibition, but it was a lot more about connecting with people, getting to meet people and learning different ways of making art. This year's Documenta, just to speak a bit in a very general way, it was curated by an Indonesian collective. So it was a lot about working collectively and challenging the ways like white cube art is created, sort of thing. So it was people from different realities. It involved participation of people, which felt really, really welcoming. I was a bit tense to go to this thing in the beginning because, as I said before, I don't like large scale art institutions, and this one is quite big. But once I was there, it was just so much about participating, exchanging, understanding processes. You know, there was a lot of history as well. There was a lot of projects that were about archiving. And so it was really inspiring. It was really exciting. It really resonated with my practice as well, and with, my experience of being an artist, a DIY artist, independent artist, without a curator or like a gallery behind me to navigate this whole creative world. So it was really good. It was really exciting.
Brilliant. You just mentioned histories. What kind of thing were they talking about?
There was a Black Archive collective, but they had a whole archive of images, videos, documents. There was the Algerian Women Archive as well. There was an archive about neurodivergent artists from the UK. There were some experimental types of archiving, which involved, I don't know, like installations with medication or different combination of materials from Haiti. They explored ideas of spirituality as well. And it was very interesting because it was put in a church, in a Catholic church.
Oh God, okay.
Yeah, and it was great. It was really good to see that iconography together with, Catholic iconography, but this Haitian iconography kind of taking over the space and being the protagonists of it all. So it was really interesting.
Okay, cool. Was it weird having all of that in Germany? Do you know what I mean? Like you've got Algerian histories, you've got probably Black diasporic histories, all of these different histories in a museum in Germany.
Yeah, well, it was very Get Out vibes, but I think I guess I'm used to this at this point, right? I've been living in Europe for quite some time now, and even regardless of living here, we know the history, we know how Europe has so much power and wealth, right? We know what went down for them to be in this position today. So it's quite expected. I think that is a bit of a trend today, probably, I mean, I'm not saying that it's just a trend. I'm saying that this is actually the result of a lot of work, people of color, to try and occupy spaces. But we also know that sometimes this can all be played out kind of thing. But I don't think that was the case because, as I said before, it was an Indonesian collective. And I think, I don't know, I guess it was the closest one can get with negotiating with these massive institutions that are, have all the power and have all the control of resources and things. So I don't know. It was weird, but it was necessary, I guess. Problematic sometimes, but it's the beginning, right, of trying to change the structures.
Yeah, and figuring out how to work in those spaces, isn't it? Because it'd be great to burn them all down, but we can't. So since we're here, it makes sense to try and negotiate those spaces as best you can.
Yeah. Also because burning the whole thing down without getting any resources is just not interesting for us, right? Because I think at the end of the day, you kind of get stuck with that discourse of like, oh, let's build places for ourselves. That's good, but in general, we need lots of resources and lots of things to be able to build our own spaces. I think that it's not about us building our own spaces, it's about the structures that are already there, which are ours historically, be given back to us.
So you have a voice on you, I've heard it. And I know you use a variety of sounds in your music. Why do you think you gravitate towards experimental music, and how does it inform your process?
I don't want to sound cliche, but it's always been in me since my childhood. I think I've always been surrounded by sounds, and I've always been very interested in these different sounds and the different ways I could keep them close to me. I think I was about 8 years old, when I had access to a double deck tape player thing.
Wow.
And I would just experiment with this. But I remember as well that I was living in the southeast Brazil at the time. My mom was studying. And I remember she had migraines, really bad migraines. And she had to be in her bedroom in complete silence and with the closed curtains because she had really strong migraines. And then I remember that our house was very silent, was very quiet. And then I would experiment with these tapes, but just kind of recording the silence bits between the tracks, not the tracks. Or another thing I would do a lot was try to emulate with another toy instrument I had. My grandmother, who used to whistle. Whistling can be a very gentle kind of sound as well, right? And also because I never really saw women whistling.
This is a thing. I think we've had a conversation about this before. When I was
living because I saw you whistling. I remember thinking when I saw you whistling, I was like, she can whistle.
Apparently women don't whistle. Like my housemate at the time, he was quite, I don't know, weirded out by the fact that I whistled so much and that I did. And he said, no, women don't whistle. He said, ask around. So I did ask some of my female friends and people in my family, and no one around me whistled.
It's so strange, isn't it? It's 2022 and it's still weird for people to think about women whistling. It's probably some kind of culture that was imposed to us that we took for granted, like trying to break it.
I'd never really thought about it before, but actually I got this skill, I suppose, from my dad, and he whistles, and no one else in my family does. So
yeah, there you go. My mom whistles, my grandmother whistles, and then I whistle as well. Yeah, to more women whistling.
Emancipate us. Okay, good.
Yeah. Yeah, so the idea of sounds and how I could use them to tell stories or use them to document a moment in my life. I've always been very sonic rather than visual. And then these weird events happen in my life that impacted my hearing or my process, like not necessarily hearing, or my process of I don't know, experiencing like something that happened, for example, when I was about 8, 9, I found tapes in the street. And then it was by this French pianist, keyboardist, Jean-Michel Jarre. And then I absolutely loved it. And that was the beginning of my little experience with playing the keyboards and playing the piano. I used to play the flute at the time. But then how did I start? I can't remember anymore. I used to play this like keyboard, but it's like a keyboard that you blow. And then
what?
It was a toy, really.
Oh, okay.
But I used to like hear my grandmother whistling, and I would play the song in the toy. And then because it was like a flute thing, my mom put me into flute, and then I started learning flute. Okay. But then in the school I was going to, there was a keyboard. It was more like an organ. You know those organs with 2 floors of keyboards?
Yeah. The ones in churches.
Exactly, with rhythms and stuff. And there I was learning to play the keyboard, but like with this old keyboard that there's a line for the bass and then another line, one on top of the other, like with the pedals as well.
But I feel like that's so dramatic. Like you learn to play in like on a massive organ.
Exactly. I loved it. I used to love
Drama.
it. And I was drama. And I was 8 years old at the time. And then I turned out to be very good.
Okay.
But it was also very much guided by my hearing. I would either memorize the songs, or I would just do what the teacher asked me to do. And then I would go home. And then when I had my keyboard, my first keyboard, I would just like improvise and play completely different things and totally disregard the exercises I was supposed to do.
They don't understand your artistry.
Exactly. I didn't care. And and then at a later stage, when I moved back to Bahia, I was about 14 or something. And then I tried to keep learning, but I had this teacher who was so old. I don't know. And then I remember thinking,
what do you mean?
Like, she was so, what's the word? She was very strict, right?
Oh, okay.
And then I would just kind of memorize the music. And she would stop me and she's like, "Where are you?" And I was like, "Oh, shit, I don't know." Because I would just memorize everything. And then I kind of realized that being a musician in these terms of like being able to play an instrument wasn't for me. I started to feel like, you can give me any instrument and I'm going to take a sound from it. But I feel like playing an instrument just for the sake of playing it doesn't really cover my needs when I'm making music, right? And anyway, at a later moment, I had a conversation with musicians and they said the same thing. They said musicians they read music. They don't make music necessarily. And so my approach then became a lot about improvising, experimenting with the instrument, with not just the traditional way of playing it, but also its body and its, try to see different possibilities out of it. So yeah, I don't know, noise and experimenting has always been there. And I think obviously as I got older and I had more access to technology and to, different ways of making sound, I kind of slowly expanded my practice to be it sort of using different media that came my way or also just responding to my socio-economical reality as well. Like, for example, when I lived in the UK, I used to find a lot of equipment in the street.
Like working equipment?
Yeah, working equipment, sometimes broken equipment, but I would still use it. And then my work will become about the faultiness of these equipments, right? So how long is this equipment resist a performance? So I had performances that lasted for like half an hour, but I had others that lasted for 2 minutes because it broke completely.
Oh, amazing.
Right? Yeah.
Is there a name for that? Like duration type? I don't know. There must be a name for that process.
Yeah, probably. But it's funny though that you say that, because durational has a tendency to be about long duration performances, never necessarily 15 seconds or like half a minute.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. But to answer the other question about vocals, this is also, you know what, it's also me trying to respond to resources that I could have access to. I've always appreciated singing, and I've always thought it was like something amazing a person can do.
Yeah.
But I never thought I was able to, although I've recorded some vocals and done music that I had vocals on it. I always felt like I always kind of hurt myself because I would either shout a lot and I would do it improperly. And then I would have this really husky voice and my throat hurt. So like, you know, I never knew how to sing. But then it's been a year and a half now, I guess, a year, 3 months or something, that I've decided to sing seriously. And so, you know, I've very disciplined to like sing and practice and experiment with my voice, because at the end of the day, this is an instrument that I've got in me, right? It's just free. So I might as well explore it. I'm still not so confident with it, but
listen, you should have seen my face. You can't see my face. When you said that, I can't describe what my face was doing, but I've heard you and you're very, very good.
Oh, thank you.
It's true.
I agree.
Don't try and be self-deprecating. No, I've heard you. Come on, let's be serious.
Yes.
You're really good.
I think I have a lot to learn, but I think it might be, the time might be coming for me to start using my voice and trusting it and exploring, you know, the different ways I can use voice, also with effects, also imagining that whole conversation we had as well about transhumanism, about autotune being like a transhumanist way of the new black subject to take over the world through technology.
Come on. Love it. You made an album about your experience with the immigration process living in the UK, where you were studying and working before you were forced to leave. What compelled you to make an album about this particular experience?
I left the UK in 2016 after about, 10 years of going back and forth from Brazil to the UK a few times. It just really felt like I had a very important experience. I felt like I grew up in so many different ways living in the UK, and also the sense that, you know, you try to, as much as I was living in a very kind of marginalized way of living, like squatting and skipping and not necessarily participating in like paying taxes, paying rent. And it was a different world.
Yeah.
It was a different world that I kind of created for myself in my community at the time. Still, eventually I did work. Eventually I did pay taxes. Eventually I did invest in my formal training. And it felt really unfair that, you know, they have this, I mean, that's obviously maybe even naive to say that it's unfair. Of course it's unfair. That's how the system is designed. And that's how, it's just language, isn't it? They like to say that, oh yeah, we want people who are like, who have something to give to our communities, who have something to contribute to the betterment of our country. I had all these, right? But still I was kicked out. I mean, I wasn't kicked out because the term kicked out, it means that I was deported, which is not the case. I just got stuck into a constantly changing immigration regulation that put me in a position where I could not renew my papers and so on. So I had to leave, and life took me to Italy, where I am. And I felt like doing this work was it just felt obvious, and it just felt like the only thing I could do.
Did it feel cathartic?
No, because I'm not a cathartic person.
Okay. You want to live with the trauma live every day?
No, I just have a very controlled way of processing things, I guess. So I think it was probably a way of processing. When I went to the south of Italy, for example, this is a place that the vast majority of boats with people leaving the Africa, or I don't know, Syria at the time, to enter Europe, Italy is one of the places, right? And especially the south of Italy. So you would turn on the TV or the radio and you would just see so many tragic stories of immigration that ended up here with death, right? And so it just got me thinking about my story of immigration, but also there's so many other million stories of immigration, of migrating, of moving. And then it got me into thinking about how goods and products and objects can circulate freely, but there's a clear difference between black bodies and white bodies, and how they can circulate is a lot different, right? So it's a very kind of invisible way of pushing some people out and keeping some people in, because quote unquote the law is the same for everyone, kind of thing,
in theory.
But for some reason Norwegians can live in the UK and Africans not. I
wonder what the reason is. It's so strange, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know.
What could it be?
I don't know. So it was thinking about all of these things, but also processing my own loss, because for me it was like a loss, and it was like a grief that I went through, the loss of my life there and everything I had built at that point, until that point. But it's been 6 years now, and I feel like I have moved on. I have built something for myself here. I feel fine about it, but it was something necessary for me to process all of these things. And it's interesting because most of that material is not accessible to me anymore, because my hard drive is broken. And then it's just a weird feeling. I don't know, that all that work that I put is not accessible anymore. But at the same way, it feels like it's in a safe place, inside my broken hard drive. It's still there, right? I suppose it's immaterial, but it's safely there. And I like this idea, that I don't have access to it, but it's safely there, and I don't have to have access to it. It's done its job, I guess.
Kind of buried, but safe.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you talk about what you did on your Instagram page in relation to this hard drive?
Okay, these days, and I think I spoke about it in the beginning, I'm trying not to rely on institutions to keep pushing my art to the world, right? So I'm now using more my social media, because I feel that although it's got so many problems and we are relying on massive tech organizations through payment or whatever, this is what's kind of easier for me to control the way I present my work. So when my hard drive broke down, I was in the middle of celebration, let's say, of this album that we were talking about, because it was 5 years this year. And then I remastered a track. I released it, and I was planning to remaster everything and release it again on the platforms and such. But then my hard drive died, and then I had to kind of like I just felt like really necessary to do a funeral for it. And then I made a video, and then I made a song using vocals, by the way.
Okay.
Which it wasn't cathartic, no, but it was free. I try to allow myself to like improvise with my voice in a very free way, kind of thing. And then I made a video celebrating the death of my hard drive and the relationship we have with technology.
What was the tone of it? Was it somber? Was it joyful? Because you say a celebration of a funeral. Do you know what I mean? Like it feels like a juxtaposition. So what was the general feeling?
For me, it feels like it's a lament, but it somehow resolves itself with a positive note. I think that's what it was.
Okay. That time sounds like it was difficult for you, but that you found a way to process in a way that's healthy for you. In general, how do you maintain your mental health, and is your creative process a part of that? Which it sounds like it is, but could you expand?
I always have to be working on something creative. I'm always thinking, I have so many ideas and I have to put them on paper or try to activate them somehow. And I realized that when I spend long periods without making art, I suddenly, I mean, not suddenly, but it's a process of feeling really depressed and, you know, kind of remove myself a bit from the world, feel unhappy about everything. And then I do something little simple, like whatever, just a drawing or just playing the keyboard a little bit or just making a little vocal line. And I'm already feeling so much better, you know?
Yeah.
Part of it is about to keep my mental health kind of in place. But of course, it's also about commentary and then being critical about some things. And I don't know, they all kind of exist together, I would say. Yeah.
I think it's cool because you've got a place to put all of these thoughts and ideas, if it's in music, if you're writing, if you're drawing. And that movement, I think, does help stress, because I'm thinking about like some of my own situations, and even just having this conversation with you and then going back and trying to mix everything and edit all of that stuff it's a creative process, and it's created, I don't know, like a healthy boundary for certain things in my life at the moment. It's really cool. Yeah, it really is. It kind of goes back to that conversation, beginning of our conversation, where we were talking about artworks that involve processes and involve, I don't know, archiving or documentation. And I feel like sometimes I do that to myself, you know, into my own processes and this different strategies I developed to solve a problem in the past, and which I could somehow use it now. I see what you mean. Thing. Yeah. So you've created certain strategies so you don't fall too far in the abyss kind of thing. Like, so it's like a I don't know, like a mental health cleanliness. Yeah, totally. It's like some kind of framework that really helps keep me balanced, you know, like, you know, it's very challenging, especially these days, right after pandemic. Yeah. So I think it all works together. It all kind of exists in tension or in balance. Yeah. Well, you're doing really well because you've just come off this amazing residency and you're glowing, and it looks like you've come away with really good ideas and really good connections, and I just think it's wonderful. I think it's great. Yeah, I'm really excited. I think it feels like kind of a new period in my life, a new moment. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to what's going to come next, to what my mind will come up with, and how I will be able to, you know, activate it and make it happen. Brilliant. Well, best of luck. We'll end our conversation there. And yeah, it was lovely speaking to you, Bartira.
It was great talking to you too. Thank you so much for inviting me.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming. And that was Bartira. I really hope you enjoyed that. If you're interested to hear or see what she's up to, you can find her on her Instagram at B4RTIR4 or on her website Cargo Collective /Bartira. Bartira spelled BARTIRA. You can find all the information in the show notes. And that's it for me this week. I hope to speak to you soon and have a good one.